Perfect, perfect. Welcome everybody that's coming in. You are in the right spot for CSUN Outdoor Adventures presentation of Grand Teton National Park with Ranger Lydia. We're going to put a couple minutes on the clock to let some more folks come in, but feel free to familiarize yourself with Zoom while we wait. Perfect, perfect. Got it. We got some kids, we got some classes going on. Outstanding. For those just joining, you can access the chat function to chat with Ranger Lydia and myself on the bottom panel if you're using the app, or it may be floating if you're on the browser version. Later on in the presentation, we'll use the Q&A feature to ask some questions that Ranger Lydia can answer live. Cool. Shout out to Miss Clipperton's first graders. They're repeat offenders. They've been here a bunch. That's excellent. Good, good, good. We'll put one more minute on the clock. I know everyone's working diligently from home, working remotely. So we'll respect your lunch break. We'll get started shortly. Oh, we already got good questions coming in too. This presentation is going to use Google Earth. So we'll solve all your map. And I'm shouting out, we'll have the map up for you. I'm shouting out Miss Naughton's second graders as well. That's awesome. That's super fun.
All right, relax in there now.
Nice. Let's see if we can promote her real quick.
Hello, everyone. My coworker Malak will be down in the chat helping answer questions too. You see answers coming from her.
Oh, did not do the right part. Perfect, perfect. Well, it's about 12:03. We've got a cool 30 minutes on the clock. Let's go ahead and get started. My name is Chris Whitesides. I'm coming at you from California State University Northridge Associated Students Outdoor Adventure Program, and we're doing our first ever virtual tour with National Park Ranger of Grand Teton National Park. So we're super happy to have you all, and even happier to have Ranger Lydia joining us for this presentation. Before I hand it over to her, we're going to do some quick Zoom housekeeping. The housekeeping is, with Zoom webinar, your microphones and cameras are going to be turned off for the duration so that we can share our screen of the national park as we jump around different sites and as Ranger Lydia shares information on each one. We have an ASL interpreter joining us today, so thank you for being here, Caitlin. Feel free to have her window as big or as small once that share screen goes up. Again, we'll be using the chat function somewhere on your Zoom webinar, depending on how you're joining. And you can use that to talk to us. At the end, we'll definitely rely on that question and answer button, that Q&A function, where we can get some live answers there. I'm going to real quickly post in the chat a handful of links that you can only access if you're on the Zoom application, but feel free to follow along or explore on your own with some of those links in there. I think that's it for me. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ranger Lydia and say thank you one more time for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. Pretty excited to be here today. This is actually one of probably my biggest programs I've ever given, so thank you for that opportunity. It's definitely pushed us here recently to do this virtually. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to talk about the park here. We're going to talk about some of the ecosystems in the park, some of the animals in the park, and some of the recreation opportunities that we have here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a quick PowerPoint we're going to go over real quick just to give you a rundown, just sort of overview of the park. And then we'll hop over to Google Earth and kind of do that virtual tour. Go ahead and share my screen here with you all. All right. Chris, can you see that?
Yep,
Perfect.
looks perfect.
Okay. Awesome. All right. From beginning. So I have been a park ranger here in Grand Teton for a few seasons, or a couple of seasons now. I'm Ranger Lydia. I have worked in Grand Tetons National Park as an interpretive ranger, and I have also worked as an education ranger here in the park, giving programs to different field trips, students across the country and locally here, virtually over the internet. And when they, sorry about that, we give the field trips to them when they come to visit the park, and we reach out to them virtually. When I stepped out of the airplane here in Grand Teton, fun fact, we're the only national park with an airport in the park. I knew that I wanted to call this place home. Grand Tetons National Park is located in the northwestern corner of Wyoming, right there. And it's in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, and that is one of the largest intact temperate ecosystems in the world. The Teton Range is actually at the heart of the ecosystem. The purpose of the park is to preserve and protect this beautiful scenery of the Teton Range and the valley of Jackson Hole. It also protects a unique geological landscape that supports diverse plants and animals. And the associated cultural resources. This is over at Mormon Row. And it also provides opportunities for enjoyment, education, and inspiration, and scientific investigation of the resources here in the park for present and future generations. So there's one of the field trips that we go on here in the park. We were established first in 1929. Jackson Hole National Monument was created in 1943, and those two units were combined to form the park that we have here today in 1950. And that is a total of 310,000 acres in size. So we have a pretty decent sized park here. The highest peak in the range towers at 13,775 feet in the air, and it's called the Grand Teton. I think we've heard that one name a time or two before. This park displays evidence of rich human history for approximately 11,000 years here in this area. Early Americans used this landscape and the resources to survive. There are currently 24 affiliated tribes that are associated with the park and still active here today. And fur trappers, homesteaders, ranchers and farmers, conservationists, and recreationists all play a part in this history. But we wouldn't have all of this beautiful scenery and abundant wildlife and history if it weren't for this awesome Teton mountain range providing the perfect setting. It's an active fault block range that stretches for about 40 miles, and it's 7 to 9 miles wide in some areas, and the range is also one of the youngest mountain ranges in North America, which still gives it those jagged peaks. They haven't had time to sort of erode away yet into smoother mountains like the Rockies. There's our active fault block. You can see this fault over at Jenny Lake area. And right now I have a short video that I'm going to show you. It's 3 billion years of geological history in 1.5 minutes. I am not a geology guru, so this video really gives you a good idea of how this landscape was formed. So here we go.
This animation compresses 3 billion years of geologic history into 1.5 minutes. It provides a glimpse of powerful geologic forces that have shaped this landscape. Notice today's view before the world spins back in time. As you journey back to the present, Watch the changes unfold. The timeline and subtitles provide the narrative to this story. Today, the landscape seems unchanging, but erosion slowly wears down rocks and earthquakes may shatter the ground. Watch for signs of change in Grand Tetons National Park.
Awesome. So that is a really short video that I enjoy. We'll go to our next slide here. So the highest temperature that we have ever recorded here was 97 degrees Fahrenheit. The extreme low was a bone-chilling negative 63 degrees. Luckily, I haven't had to experience that here yet. I have had to run my hair dryer out to my door to thaw it out before, though. The average snowfall in the valley here is about 173 inches, while the snow higher up in the mountains can be as deep as a 3-story building is tall. The Snake River runs through this valley and through the park. It's the headwaters of the Columbia River systems, and there are 6 morainal lakes that are scattered along the base of the Teton Range, and over 100 alpine and backcountry lakes can be found. So we have a lot of water here. It's also home to some of the greatest populations of wildlife in the world. And that is where we're going to go into our Google Earth here. Turn my face back on to you all. All right. Are we headed over to Schwabacher's Landing, Chris?
Here we are.
Awesome. All right. So here we are at Schwabacher's Landing. Visitors come from all over the place to come to this park and view wildlife. We have a lot of different options here for people in the park, but when we are fully open. Right now, the recreational opportunities are a little limited due to everything with COVID. But when you are out looking for wildlife, there's a little more to it than just driving around and looking. It's helpful if you know the habitats and areas of the park. This is called the aquatic community here at Schwabacher's Landing. This is actually one of my favorite parts of the park. There's beaver dams and beavers that can be viewed here. There's also this little trail that you can see the people on. If you follow that for about 2 miles, that's going to take you back to the Snake River. Can you pull up that first photo for me, please, Chris? It'll be of an cool. Awesome. So this is a really good spot for photography. People enjoy having weddings here too. Thank you. I took that photo myself actually one day on patrol. I was just at the right place at the right time. People enjoy fly fishing down here too. So streams and lakes and ponds, those are all included in that aquatic community, and this is just one of those good examples of them. You could pull that next photo up, please. Eagles love to fly around in this area. I love the birding opportunities here. If you go out to the Snake River or areas like that, just go ahead and scan the treetops and try to find yourself an eagle out there. Next photo, please. The American beaver also calls this area its home. So like I said, you'll find the beaver dams out there, a beaver pond if you go up the trail a little more. And this is actually America's largest rodent. When a beaver is disturbed, it'll slap its tail real loud on the water, and it sends out a signal to the other beavers to dive, so they'll be all safe and they can get away from the predator or whatever's coming for them. Their eyelids are actually translucent, so they can see under the water, and they can hold their breath for about 15 minutes at a time. So that's pretty incredible. We'll go ahead and fly over to our next spot here. That's going to be Willow Flats Overlook. All right. I wish I could travel through the park this fast. All right, this is a beautiful view. This is our Willow community. This spot is called the Willow Flats Overlook. These communities are found along the banks of streams, meadows, lower areas where the water table is close to the surface. There's a Willow Flats trail that lies here. It's about 6 miles point to point, but if you go down there, just be bear aware. Grizzlies love to hang out up north in the north part of the park. Right now, there's currently a wildlife closure there due to grizzly bears in that area. So we'll go ahead and pull up a photo, please. We'll show you a photo of a moose here. They love the Willow community. All right. This is the largest member of the deer family. They can weigh up to 1,600 pounds. It's as big as a horse with a heavy body and these really long, lanky legs. They're actually able to seal up their nostrils so that they can graze underwater. They love that vegetation. And we actually have more moose here than they do up in Yellowstone in our neighboring park. So that's pretty cool. I saw them a lot last year. Males are called bulls, females are called cows, and younger ones are called calves. The oldest known moose was 27 years old. It's pretty old. We can go over to Oxbow Bend now, check that area out. This is just across the street from the Willow Flats Overlook, so these are sort of in the same area here. This is one of the most photographed parts of the park. It's gorgeous any time of the year. People do love it in the fall though. Mount Moran's reflection down in the Snake River is just an iconic view for many. Birding and wildlife are popular here, and as someone told me before, remember, no two photos are the same. The clouds and the environment are always changing. So no matter how many people are taking the pictures, know that yours is unique. I saw my very first otter down here, river otter, and it was so cute. Water covers the meadows part of the year, but unlike marshes and bogs, these meadows have solid ground below. So you'll sometimes find that these areas are just covered in wildflowers. I know in the next couple of months they will start popping off. We'll show you a photo real quick here. Pull that photo up. It's just some visitors taking that nice iconic photo. If we could go to that next one, please. This is a great gray owl. They do not typically live in these areas, but they love to hunt the meadows. Field mice and all other types of rodents just love to run through the meadows, and these owls have really good vision and hearing, and it provides really good opportunity for open field hunting. Can we go to the next one, please? This is also a really cool animal that we have here. This is an elk. He has some really unique antlers here in this photo. Elk are very large animals. They're members of the deer family, and they shed their antlers every year, which is different from horns. And new antlers grow back every year. And while they're growing, they're actually covered in velvet. In the fall time, if you come here, a lot of the animals are mating and migrating and moving around, and you can often hear them bugling off in the distance looking for their mate. It's a really cool experience. Can we fly over to Elk Ranch Flats now, please? All right. So those were on, that last location was on the Teton Park Road. Now we're going to go over to the highway that runs through this park. I really like the photos that you can take from the highway. You get that flat valley view with the dramatic silhouette of the mountains rising off in the horizon. It's one of my favorite shots. This area is called Elk Ranch Flats. This is a really good spot for wildlife photography and just to kind of have a snack if you want to. Bison typically like to hang out around here. This is called the sagebrush community. It's considered, well, the soil is found here that is very dry because of the intense sunlight that it gets because it doesn't really have any coverage. It's a dry grassland with drought-tolerant plants such as sagebrush, and this community is typically found in an arid area, generally flat, and it's sometimes referred to as the sagebrush sea. It might look large and empty, but if you get really close, it's full of life. This is actually the largest, most obvious community that we have here in the park. But we'll go over to the bison. Can we pull that photo up, please? There's no mistaking the bison if you see one of those here in the park. It has that really big hump on its back and those small horns. Unlike the antlers, those horns are actually going to grow on its head its whole entire life, so those are never going to come off of its head. They're the largest mammal in North America, and they are just massive with the large shoulder humps and short necks, and they can run up to 35 miles an hour and jump 3-foot fences. So don't let its giant size fool you. It's pretty capable of doing some cool stuff. But speaking of fast runners, can we go to the next photo, please? We're going to look at our pronghorn. This is our pronghorn here. The closest relative of this animal is actually a giraffe, as far as the closest living animal in the world, which is really neat. It can run up to 60 miles an hour. This is because the North American cheetah used to live in this area and preyed on it, so they had to learn how to outrun its predator. They're pretty amazing animals. Sometimes they're called antelope, so you might hear them referred to as pronghorn or antelope. Next up, we'll head over to Jenny Lake here. This is another one of my favorite spots. You can't go wrong here. This is one of the most popular parts of our park. So expect traffic if you're going to go over there during a popular or busy part of the year. It's a great way to access Cascade Canyon. You can see that U-shaped canyon right there. And Inspiration Point lies back there, and so does Hidden Falls, one of the waterfalls here in the park. So there's a lot of good scenery on this. If you want to hike around the whole entire lake, it's just a little under 8 miles. And there's also other good trails that you can access from this area. Black bears love this area. They're great tree climbers, and despite their name black bear, as some of you know out in California, they can come in different shades. They can be cinnamon, blonde, black, and brown, and they're great tree climbers. Awesome. There's our photo of the black bear. Next up, we'll head over to our Lakeshore Trail up in Coulter Bay. So this is going to be back up in that Elk Ranch Flat, Oxbow Bend area. Really hopping around today. All right. I love this area too. In the winter, I go out here and ice fish, but in the summertime, I'll go out there and hike around. This Lakeshore Trail is a little over 2 miles long, and it has really good views of the water with the mountain range behind it. Grizzly bears tend to hang out more north of the park, like I mentioned earlier, so you might run into one of those up here. Can we see that photo of the grizzly, please? Awesome. So grizzlies have a large hump on their shoulder, and just like the buffalo, and that's actually muscle mass from ripping and tearing apart the ground and turning over rocks trying to find food and vegetation. Grizzlies can actually live to be around 25 years old. We have a famous one that lives up there. Her name is Grizzly 399. You might have heard about her. She actually just got spotted this week with quadruplets. So she has 4 cubs this year. I hope I don't run into her out there. All right, and we'll go over to our last community up in the Alpine area. Google Maps makes it really easy to get up here compared to the elevation gain when you're hiking. Awesome, this spot is beautiful. So this is our alpine community. That's going to be up higher in the mountains where you see that snow sort of hanging out year round. When tectonic plates mash into each other, the Earth's crust came up higher and higher, forming those mountains that we have today. And the alpine home is pretty cold and bare the higher up you get up there. The growing seasons are a lot shorter, and the weather can be very unpredictable. At the top, there may be nothing but snow and ice, but the bleak landscapes are actually home to a diverse array of plants and animals adapted for the environment. This is just off of the Teton Crest Trail area. The Teton Crest Trail is a popular hike for people here in the park. This is going to be the longest one that I mentioned today. It's about 40 miles long, so it takes a couple days to get that one done, depending on how good of a hiker you are. There's hiking and climbing up here, photography, wildlife viewing, and fishing. We'll go ahead and pull up that photo real quick. This is a bighorn sheep. These are kind of rare to see in the park, but if you pay attention, you might get lucky. They love the alpine. They have really good balance and agility that helps them get away from predators up in these high areas, and they can hang out on crops, the rocky outlining of the mountains. And their horns can actually weigh 30 pounds. Can you imagine holding 30 pounds on your head and hopping around these mountains with such good balance? It's pretty cool. Can we see that next photo, please? And this is our last animal for the day that calls this alpine home. Ooh, another awesome spot. This is our pika. This is the American pika. It lives in those rocky areas up in the alpine. And the pika is actually a close relative to rabbits and hare families. It's about the size of a guinea pig, but they're hard to find. You can typically hear them chirping very loud, echoing over the mountains instead of seeing them because they're gray and they kind of blend in, camouflage into their backgrounds. But this is actually a photo of a pika with its flowers in their mouth. They work so hard all summer long to collect grasses and flowers, and they put them all together in little areas, and they call this a pika haystack. And these haystacks can actually be as big as 4 feet wide. So that is a lot of work for this little animal to do. They don't really hibernate over the winter time, but they'll hang out near that pika haystack and eat that during those times where they don't really have any food that grows up there. But the thing that this pika has to worry about the most is actually the temperature in the air. Pikas can't survive temperatures over 77.9 degrees. It's fatal for that pika. So as temperatures kind of warm up, here in the park or in the Sierras, we find that those pikas go higher up in the mountains to search out that temperature that they need to survive. So biologists worry about that for these species because what happens when they run out of mountain to go up? All right, that is the end of my Google Earth tour and a little bit of knowledge on some animals here in the park. Thank you for navigating that for me, Chris.
I added one extra bonus slide as we peek out on the very tip top of Grand Teton Mountain itself,
right,
just because this one was too good to skip. And we had a super good question of what makes Grand Teton Park special to you?
To me. Good question. Exactly. Yeah. I love Grand Teton. I've never seen a landscape like this as far as that flat valley. It just seems like when you're driving up these mountains, just shoot out of the ground out of nowhere. And I'm very into wildlife, and I love the variety of wildlife that I get to see here on a regular basis that I can't see anywhere else in the country.
Nice. Perfect. We had another question about what is your favorite backcountry trail to go on?
Ooh, my favorite backcountry trail. That's a good question as well. This one's sort of popular, but don't let that scare you away. I love that Cascade Canyon area right there that's on that Google Earth. That you go in that Cascade Canyon and you can actually do a loop with Paintbrush Canyon if you're looking on the map there. And that is an amazing loop. And you get to hit some of those alpine lakes too.
Nice. What is your favorite animal?
Oh, favorite animal? It used to be the grizzly bear. Until last year. I work here in Moose, Wyoming out of the Craig Thomas Discovery Visitor Center. And we have a really high concentration of moose here. I became known as the moose whisperer last year. Every time I left the office, I would run into moose everywhere I went. So now I kind of have a special spot in my heart for them.
Okay, so you're hiking along. What should you do if you see a moose or maybe a bear?
Ooh, moose. Moose, I would just kind of give it some space and kind of back away. You want to stay about 20 yards or more from the moose. They're very unpredictable animals. So, but if you were to ever be approached by one, if it were like charging at you, my best recommendation would be to get behind a tree. But grizzly bears, if you run into them, do not look them into the eye. Just slowly back away and say, "Hey bear, I'm backing away, bear. I'm giving you some space," and just slowly back out of the situation. And always just be bear aware while you're out. If you're around like loud water or vegetation that's too high where you can't really see anything, just go ahead and give yourself a clap or a yell just so that anything in that area knows that you're around so that you don't really have to scare them by accident.
I'm writing all these down. These are really good pro tips.
Oh, pro tip, take bear spray.
We got some photographers in the crowd. What's the best time to go for fall colors?
Fall colors. September. September is a great month for fall colors. It's a lot of weather dependent here. Our weather is very unpredictable. It was snowing this morning when I came to work. But September, beginning mid-September, is a really good time for fall colors. I love the Taggart Lake area. We do a autumn stroll hike when we're operating regularly there, so you can see all the pretty colors of fall.
With fall colors in mind, we talked about favorite animals. Do you have a favorite plant?
Ooh, my favorite plant. We'll go ahead. I showed a photo in my PowerPoint. That's the Alpine Forget-Me-Not. That's actually our national park's flower here. It grows up in the Alpine where pretty much, like not a lot of things can grow up there. But it has adapted over time to where it somehow grows way up in the mountains and survives. And it has this really cool yellow target in the middle that attracts bees so that it can help pollinate and keep its population up.
It's really cool. Can you say the name one more time?
The Alpine Forget-Me-Not.
Beautiful. Switching gears a little bit. Seems like you got a pretty cool job. How'd you become a ranger?
Oh, how did I become a ranger? I've definitely went down a few different avenues in my life, but once I moved out to Wyoming in 2014, I started getting really into the outdoors, getting into wildlife, and I swapped up my degree and just really grabbed the bull by the horns and set my mind to it. I went out to Yosemite and I worked for a partner there. I'm doing wilderness ranger work, Yosemite Conservation Conservancy, And then I volunteered with the National Park Service and got to work with black bears in Yosemite. And that's sort of how I started getting my foot in the door.
Super cool. Grand Teton's kind of a weird name. How did it get that name?
Yeah. This name, it was actually named by French explorers that were coming out here. As you're driving close to the park, it's sort of hard to miss that big notch in the sky, which is the Grand Teton. So you could see that and everyone could just kind of follow that and you know you're going in the right direction. But as the name says, if you want to Google that French translation, I'm sure you'll get a good laugh.
We got another career path. What area of college, or what was your major in college to help you become a ranger?
Environmental science with a focus on conservation and natural resources. But if there is so many different jobs with the Park Service, if you have a degree in different types of fields, I'm sure you can find something that you're into. As far as jobs go in the park.
Awesome. Super good advice. When are some maybe other best times to visit the park? I know you talked about fall colors. What are some other good times to go?
Yeah. The fall colors, like I said, in September, in that October range. October, the weather gets kind of moody, so it starts getting a little rainy and snowy here, but the animals are migrating like crazy at that time. And right now, actually, a lot of the animals are out migrating back for the summer. So I'm really into animals, so I like those migrating times of the year. So around May, beginning of June, and then down in September. Those are probably my two favorite times. It's not as busy yet either during that time.
Got it. That's kind of a fun one. What's your favorite memory in this park?
My favorite memory. I had to think about that one. I have a lot. A lot of good memories here. Probably one of my favorite memories, this is a little wacky, but I was actually camping up at Lizard Creek. That's one of the campgrounds here. That's more north of the park. But I was camping there and a grizzly came through with 2 cubs, and that was my first time ever really seeing a grizzly, and I was just pretty scared. But then there was like this older volunteer and she was banging her pans and yelling at the bears, and they got on out of there. So that's one of my fond memories.
That's terrifying. We got a couple different questions coming in about what's the current status of the park? Is it open or closed?
That's a really good question right now, and a popular question. Right now we are open, but with limited resources. So right now we're at phase 1 opening for the park. So we have a couple of day hikes that people can go on. A lot of the snow is still on the ground. So some of the trails aren't melted out and stuff right now. There's no boating access right now, and no camping or lodging in the park. So pretty much just day use, no visitor services.
Got it.
We're working on that.
Got it. Thank you for sharing. We got time for one more. We got a couple questions asking, can you tell us about the other places you worked?
The other places that I worked? Yeah. The only other park that I've worked at was Yosemite National Park, which I know is not too far for some of you watching today. And I love Yosemite. And like I said, I did some wilderness ranger work in the backcountry hiking trails and checking trail conditions. And I worked with the black bears there, kind of hazing and trapping and doing all of that fun stuff. Yeah, but that's as far as I've worked. I've been to 28 national parks, so I love to travel and visit my national parks.
Got it. Well, Lydia, I want to respect your time and respect everyone else's. So thank you one more time for doing this. This was an awesome, your journey as a ranger and then our collective journey through the park. That was really special. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great.
Perfect.
And if
Perfect.
anyone has questions, he threw an email over there. It's GRTE_education at nps.gov, and you all can email questions to that if you have more.
Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you again for doing this, Lydia. Our next virtual tour will take place on Monday. I believe we're going back to Death Valley. It's going to be the same link, and we may have another incredible ranger like Lydia joining us for that. So thank you all for stopping by. I'm going to put in those links one more time so you can learn more about Grand Tetons and check out some of our other offerings. But besides that, thank you, Ranger Lydia. Thank you, Ranger Malak. And we look forward to seeing you all at our next virtual adventure.